On March 24th, 2015, the populace was blessed with a new Souls game from FromSoftware and director Hidetaka Miyazaki. Following the spirits of both Dark Souls and Demon Souls, Bloodborne is another massively intuitive, hardcore action RPG game filled to the brim with gothic horror theming. But with the completion of the main game, many players were left wanting more. Thankfully, 8 months down the road, Bloodborne's first DLC expansion, The Old Hunters, was released, giving more opportunities for players all around the world to shed some more blood. Stocked with 10 plus weapons to use, 3 brand new worlds for our hunting ground, and 5 more bosses, The Old Hunters seems to be teeming with a lot more content and replayability. Now the only question remaining is, will we finally succumb to the beastly scourge, or will we, at last, cleanse these foul streets?
You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
The main draw of the Souls games and Bloodborne is the strategy behind every move we make. Your attacks and your dodging eat a small portion of your stamina gauge, and dodging itself is something that, if not timed right, you will be punished for severely. This of course makes almost every enemy encounter a difficult one, and even the most basic of enemies can outright slaughter you if not played carefully. Though this may sound a bit harsh, its reward from defeating foes and overcoming intricate boss battles is one that shines vibrantly throughout the entire series. The Old Hunters' new enemies and bosses only adds to this depth even more. Prepare to have a real challenge, as the difficulty spike from the first level alone is one that many players weren't prepared for. It's usually recommended to actually venture into its madness once near the end of the main game. The regular bosses and beasts fought all across Bloodborne are, without a doubt, terrifying and difficult enough as it is. But with the Old Hunters, you'll truly be tested as you continue your hunt. Even the first boss of the DLC is one that you shouldn't take lightly, and yet, this is not at all a drawback of the gameplay, but rather another reason to keep on playing. The rewards from at last slaying the bosses, be it the first or the last of the expansion, is a feeling that truly invigorates you and makes you feel proud that you, after so many attempts, have at last refined your skills as a hunter. And any fan of the Souls games wouldn't have it any other way. Among the new bosses, the new levels and weapons adds another layer of craft into the mix. Traversing through the nightmarish version of Cathedral Ward and Yharnam creates even more meaning and questions behind the hunters of old. There's never a moment where you don't feel a sense of dread or horror lurking in the darkness, and the new areas such as the Research Hall and Fishing Hamlet fit in nicely with the other levels that created Bloodborne in the first place. Gameplay and replayability is another big draw of the Old Hunters. The 10 new trick weapons and various spells and armor sets you pick up only open up the avenue for character builds even more so. Each weapon is a welcomed addition and has their own new moveset and usage. In fact, the number of weapons and such added to the DLC actually manages to address some of the more common issues that Bloodborne originally had, which were the limited amount of weapons in contrast to Dark Souls. But with the Old Hunters, this issue has finally been addressed and makes certain builds such as Arcane or Strength Blood Tinge more viable, which is of course nice. Even the new runes adds another dimension to the combat and weaponry setup you choose. Mix all of these new and delightful additions together, along with the new ability to summon NPC hunters from the latest patch, and the Old Hunters DLC truly completes the game that is Bloodborne.
Don't be brash. Turn back before it's too late. Unless you've something of an interest in nightmares.
Of course, it isn't perfect. The level designs of the Hunter's Nightmare may appear to be rehashed old levels to some, with slight variances in landscapes, which does come off as a tad lazy. However, considering the lore behind it and the story of the Hunters, it makes sense in the end. Still, it would have been more amazing just to see the first new levels with a little more creativity, but the grotesque pools of blood and twisted ruins of something all too familiar is an idea that really shows the haunting duality between the real world and the nightmare. And although the new weapons look and feel amazing and strong in their own regards, there might be one or two weapons that just seem to be skin variants of previous weapons, such as the Rakuyo or Church Pick. It makes sense as to why they added these in, so that the players of certain stat builds could have more options and variances, but it seems like such a waste to only dedicate 10 weapons to the DLC and have a couple be just the same as the other weapons from the main game, with the only difference being their moveset. Perhaps if some of these weapons scaled with another stat, or if they simply didn't look and feel like better versions of the older weapons, this wouldn't have been so bad. But again, the weapons overall help build multiple reasons to play different ways and create more run-throughs with different character types. Overall, I'd say Bloodborne: The Old Hunters is more than certainly worth the investment if you've been left wanting more out of Bloodborne. It makes the entire game come full circle and answers any lingering questions you may have had after beating the main story again and again. Though the difficulty may prove to be, well, difficult, it simultaneously forces you to prove yourself as a real hunter by having spot-on dodging and attacking, truly making you feel as if you've mastered the game, which is an amazing incentive to continue hunting the beasts of the night.